am Stonesy Boy, and welcome to Reading with Stonesy. So, for those who are here because of the stream today, trust me, these are going to be edited and posted later, so you really don't got to worry about it right now. Future thing, really. But to those who are confused, hello there. We're going to read today. So let's get comfortable, and that's a really, hold on, I'm sorry, that light placement is just awful. Is this gonna burn my hand if I touch this light bulb? No. Yes. A little bit of yes and no. It's like a nice little 50-50. So let's turn off the light so I don't get electrocuted. Take out this bulb very gently, very gently. Thing with light bulbs is they're made of very thin types of glass that you can only mine out of certain glass deposits. So breaking one is very easy. Is this one even getting power? I don't know. Oh my goodness, when I placed in these light bulbs, these were like the worst placement. Okay, tighten that up. Ooh, burned my hand a little bit, but that's okay. There we go. This bulb seems to be okay, but also dead. Okay, so now the only thing lit up in my room is my personal little corner, which is great, because that means I can read. It's gonna be, that's a little bit of a weird glow, I'll be honest, but that's okay. I'm also gonna charge my phone while I do this. Should we make a custom bookmark today? That'd be pretty neat. If we could do that. Maybe. I don't know. Okay. Also, phone, you are going to the floor. Because if you go in the middle of my recording, then I'm going to have to kill someone. Also, my hair is going to keep getting in my eyes. So I'm going to put on my newly bought hat, which should help me when I read, because my long hair is annoying. For those who didn't know, during quarantine, I kind of let my hair go out. So I got used to it then. Then I cut it short again. Now my hair is bloody long again, which is amazing. Okay. We left off last time on page 100. And now we're going to go to page 101. For future Stonesy, I shall go quiet for a few seconds and start reading. Perfect. She frowned and turned in a circle. Given that the attic had no closets or hidden rooms, it was obvious the trunk wasn't there where Cade had said he was going to put it. He lied. Selena ground her teeth. She felt her shoulders tighten. All her suspicions, which she tucked away successfully since the moment during their wedding, flooded back in. Her husband was keeping something from her, or had he gotten rid of the trunk after all? Selena would bet big money that he hadn't. Huffing in annoyance, Selena left the attic and trotted back down the stairs. She closed the door of the attic and stood with her back to it. She looked up and down the hall, where Cade stashed the trunk. Well, if it was in the house, Selena was going to get it. She closed the door in the attic, thought for a moment. Where would he put it? The garage, she decided. That's where she would have put it if she'd been Cade. The garage was more of Cade's domain than it was Selena's. If it was a 3-car garage, and he planned to turn 1/3 of it into a workshop. The other 2 stalls would be for their vehicles. Although Cade had a lot of tools and athletic equipment and gardening stuff, there wasn't so much of it could bury a trunk. It only took about 15 minutes of poking around the garage to determine the trunk wasn't there. Now what? Selena returned to the house. The farmhouse wasn't huge, but it was only about 2,000 square feet and 3 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. In all, the home had 5 closets plus a pantry. Selena started in the pantry. She was pretty sure the trunk wasn't there because she'd been in and out of the room several times. But it could have been buried under the boxes of pots and pans that she'd opened up. Opened yet? It wasn't. Selena moved on to the coat closet. No luck. She tried the linen closet, the closet in the room. Again, she didn't expect to find it there and didn't. The closet in the room that they were going to set up for guests. No trunk. Their last closet was in what was now a completely empty room. They had decided on what this room would be, so they just closed it up for now. Selena hadn't been in it at all since the day they made it their offer on the house. The door was an empty room, creaked, and Selena pushed it open. The sound of the reminiscent of the soundtrack of a scary movie that Selena wouldn't have been surprised to find the trunk sitting right inside of the door, opening of the gaping maw of the demon writing to. Selena stepped into the room. It was empty. Setting her jaw, Selena marched across the room and jerked open the closet door. She frowned. Although the closet's hanging rod was empty and the shelf above it was bare, beneath the rod of the shelf was a stack of boxes. The closet would have been as empty as the room. Why was there boxes in it? Selena reached for a box. She lifted it and practically tossed it over her head. It was so light to lift her was overkill. She shook the box. It was empty. Selena picked up the next box for what was next. Every box was empty. Why would Cade have filled the closet with empty boxes? They agreed to break down the boxes for recycling. There was only one reason to stack up empty boxes, and it had been a makeshift screen, to hide something. Heat beginning to pulse Selena's ears. She started tossing empty boxes out of the closet. 8 empty boxes. She threw them onto the vacant room's wood floor. When she looked at the pile of blankets behind the boxes, what were the blankets doing in there? They would have been in the linen closet. There was not only one reason for a stack of blankets. They created a nice thick cloak. They, too, were meant to hide something. Emitting a growl of anger, Selena threw aside the blankets, and there it was. The trunk squatted in front of her, its 2 clasps in its center lock, not like a grumpy face looking up at her. A grizzled, grumpy face. Selena didn't waste any time. She dropped to her knees. She undid the clasp of the 2 loud metal clicks. When she tried to open the lock, it wouldn't open. It was, well, locked. Where would Cade keep the key? Selena sat back on her heels. The key could be anywhere. Selena peered at the lock. Could she pick it? Selena gave the trunk a dirty look, then stood and strode out of the room. She trotted along the hall and jogged down the stairs. She ducked into her office. Sitting, she opened her laptop and got on the internet. Her fingers were poised over the keyboard, preparing to type in how to pick a steamer trunk lock. But then she dropped her hand. She closed the laptop. To heck with it. She didn't want to mess around with learning how to pick a lock. She better off breaking the lock. Selena got up and left her office. It took just a few minutes to return to the garage and get some tools. Not sure what she'd need. Selena grabbed a hammer, a crowbar, and a couple of screwdrivers. Once she had them, she returned them to the house, ran back up the stairs, and strode them into the 3rd bedroom. She dropped to the floor in front of the trunk. Selena had never needed to open a steamer trunk before, so she didn't know what she was doing. Maybe she should have found a video about prying open a trunk before she was just assuming it would be a breeze. She discovered quickly that the crowbar and hammer weren't helpful. Pounding and prying at the large tool did little more than make a lot of noise and put a few more jagged tears in a 50-pound duck cloth that covered the trunk's wood slats. When Selena abandoned the larger tools, though, and picked up the screwdriver, she had more luck. She finally popped the lock free from the trunk by using a 2-pronged prying attack with both screwdrivers. When the lock pringed loose in the trunk and clattered to the floor, she dropped the screwdrivers and did her little fist bump. Yes, she crowed. Eagerly, she put her hands on both sides of the lid. She started to lift it. From downstairs, a thud told Selena the front door had just closed. She heard footsteps. Cade's footsteps. Cade, her convincing, sneaky husband, was home, and boy was he in trouble. Her anger tempted her curiosity. Selena let go of the trunk's lid. She leaped to her feet and ran out of the room. She raced downstairs to confront her lying husband. Cade looked up and shaking water out of his hair. When Selena reached the bottom of the stairs, "Boy, it's really going down out there," Cade said. "I thought I'd come home and have lunch with my beautiful wife, and halfway there the sky decided to try to drown me." Selena glanced out the window. It must have started raining while she was getting the trunk unlocked. She wouldn't have noticed. Selena looked back at Cade. She saw a dark green polo shirt and his khakis were drenched. Normally Selena would have made a joke about getting him out of his clothes, but she didn't feel like joking. She didn't care how soaked he was. Selena clenched her fist against her lips. "Why didn't you put the trunk where you were going to put it?" Cade wiped his face and looked at Selena. "What? The trunk? Why didn't you put it in the attic? You hid it behind empty boxes and blankets. Why would you do that?" Cade's face went from so stony that it really would have been chiseled. "That's me." "Did you open it?" Selena frowned at him. She didn't answer his question. Cade rushed over to Selena. His sopping loafers made squishy slapping sounds of the wood floor. He grabbed her arms. "Did you open it?" he repeated. This time he threw out the words so fast that they ran together. "You didn't answer my question," Selena said. Cade gave Selena a little shake. "Did you open it?" Selena grimaced at Cade's fingers tightened in her arms. She jerked out of the grass and stepped away from him. "Did you open it?" he repeated. This time the words were spaced out. "Did you open it?" His tone was low, almost threatening. "No," Selena barked. "I was about to, but I heard you coming in and..." Kate didn't want her to finish. She brushed past her and pounded up the stairs. Selena gaped at him for an instant. When she shook off her surprise and ran after him, Kate got to the third bedroom seconds before Selena caught up to him. By the time she did, he was on his knees in front of the trunk. Taking a deep breath, he lifted the trunk's lid. Selena stepped behind Kate and looked down into the trunk. She exhaled her pent-up breath. The trunk was empty, completely empty. "No," Kate breathed. He lifted his head and looked around. He was ashen. His gaze started around the room. His eyes moistened. For a second, Selena thought he was going to cry. Then he wiped his hand over his face and looked back at the empty trunk. Selena didn't know what she expected to find in the trunk, but seeing it empty had flooded her with relief. She still didn't know what the deal was with Cade and the trunk, but at least she didn't contain something horrible. "I'm so sorry," Selena said. Selena put her hand on Cade's shoulder. Though it was a wet shirt, she could feel his shoulder trembling. In spite of being drenched, he didn't feel cold. So he assumed he was shaking because he was so angry with her. She said, after all, not only made her clear not to trust him, she'd violate his trust too. She poked into his private stuff. She had been furious if he'd done that to her. Not that she had anything to hide. "I'm really, really sorry," she said. I don't know. It just bugged me. Why were you so secretive about a stupid trunk? I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have. Kate stood. He turned and wrapped his arms around Selena. "It's okay," he said. "It's okay." Selena wasn't sure if it was okay. Pressed against his wet shirt-covered chest, she could feel his racing heart, and she felt the tightness in his muscles and arms and shoulders. She returned to his embrace. She also smelled something she never smelled on Cade before. It was the odor of rancid sweat. She stepped back and looked at his face. His forehead was moist. He wiped away the rain, so it wasn't that. It was precipitation. He was so scared that she was smelling. It was a stench of fear. Selena knew it wasn't okay, no matter what Kate said. She didn't discover how not okay it was, though, until that night. Kate had settled himself pretty quickly after he closed the trunk and stuck it back in the closet. He ignored the scattered empty boxes and the blankets as if he didn't see them. More likely, he didn't want to explain why he'd gone to such lengths to hide an empty trunk. Selena was so reassured by an empty trunk that she didn't press Kate about why he was hidden in a way he had. Instead, she said brightly, "I'll make us tuna sandwiches." Kate had changed clothes, coming downstairs in another pair of khakis and dark blue polo shirt. Kate's wardrobe was a little limited, but he had made small talk about his workday while he ate. Selena had told him about her morning walk. The conversation she had sounded okay with all the right bits of humor, but it didn't seem quite right. There was a bit more undertone to their words, one that they both ignored. Kate had returned to work after lunch. Selena forced herself to put the whole trunk business out of her mind. She had to get some work done too. Dinner was a little more normal than lunch had been. She tried a new pasta recipe, and Kate had said he loved it. He had a second helping. Only the barest trace of tension had remained between them. By the time they'd gotten ready for bed, the tension returned, though, when Kate gave Selena a peck on the cheek and told her that he was exhausted and needed to go right to sleep. Usually they cuddled before settling in, snuggling together and talking drowsily about their plans for the next day. Not that night. Kate got under covers and closed her eyes. Selena was wide awake, but she got into bed right next to him, and she turned on the light. They lay next to each other, not touching, not talking. Selena listened to Cade's even breathing. He was pretending to sleep, but he wasn't. There was an outgoing hiss in his breath when he was really asleep. Selena didn't hear this hiss. Selena, who practiced meditation and yoga, was more adept to feigning sleep. She slowed her breathing and relaxed all her muscles. She knew she appeared to be asleep, but she wasn't. Selena wasn't sure how long he focused her breathing before he heard Cade stir. She felt the covers lift. A cool air current fluttered her bare arms. The mattress shifted. Cade was up. The floor creaked. He was moving away from the bed. Selena was barely opened her eyes. She shifted her head slowly and quietly. Because they hadn't agreed on the color scheme of the bedroom, two paned windows that looked out of the other backyard were covered only with flimsy shears that previous owners had left behind. The shears did little to block out the light. Now they let in the radiance of three-quarter moon on a flimmy shimmers that sprayed across the room. Selena could clearly see Cade in that gleam. Selena watched as Cade went down to his knees. His head disappeared now at the level of the mattress. He seemed to be looking under the bed. Cade raised his head. Selena closed her eyes. She listened to his footsteps move away from the bed. She opened her eyes again. Cade was moving around the room slowly. It looked like she was searching for something. His head swiveled left and right and back again and moved to his side of the room to hers. On her side, he opened the closet door. He looked in the closet, pushing back clothes for a few seconds, then shut the door. Selena closed her eyes again, and then Cade turned around. She concentrated on her easy breathing as Cade rounded the bed and got back to the covers. This time, Cade's breathing settled into his familiar hissing rhythm a few minutes after he lay down. It took Selena a while before she joined him in sleep. And that sleep didn't last long. Cade's footsteps woke Selena, lying on her side now. She glanced at the clock. It was only an hour since they'd first turned out the lights. Cade was on a prowl again. Listening intently, she could tell that he was going through the same searching routine. Selena debated whether to turn on the light and ask Cade what he was doing. Before they moved to his house, found out his particular attachment to the trunk of the mysterious past of Freddy's, Selena would have met this issue head on. She wouldn't have hesitated to ask Cade what he was doing. Now she knew even if she did that, she wouldn't get an answer. And she wasn't up to dealing with any more of Cade's evenness just yet. Cade got back in bed and she returned to sleep. So did Selena. They repeated the process 3 more times that night. Come morning, Cade looked wiped out and he got back up to go for his run. Selena was so exhausted that she went back to sleep until Cade returned from his run. She pretended she was asleep while he showered and got ready for work. She didn't get out of bed until she heard his SUV head down the driveway. Selena put up with Cade's nocturnal paranoia for nearly a week before she finally turned to ask him what was going on. By then, she was dragging from lack of sleep. She was fed up. On the 7th night that Selena woke up to see Cade looking on the bed, she sighed heavily and leaned over to turn to the ginger jar lamp on the nightstand. Cade's head shot up. His hair disheveled. He blinked into a sudden illumination. He looked like a little kid, caught in the act of some mischief. Selena scooted into the sitting position. What exactly are you doing? She asked. Cade blinked again. What do you mean? He asked inanely. Selena pulled the covers and crossed his arm over him. Don't play dumb. You know what I mean. You've been jumping in and out of bed like a jack-in-the-box for the last week. What's going on? You act like you're checking for the boogeyman. Cade rubbed his eyes and made a face. Sighing, he pushed himself up and sat on the edge of the bed. Selena stared at his broad shoulders and this way his hair curled behind his ears. She loved those curls. Cade? Cade turned, then slipped under the covers with her. She lay back and shifted so she could look at him. He lay down, too, facing her. Selena reached out to touch Cade's cheek. It was rigid and cold. She looked at the dark circles under his eyes. They had been there since the night she'd been acting paranoid. Cade reached up and caught her hand. He kissed her knuckles. I never wanted to tell you about any of this. I just want to forget it. But now, Cade, what is it? What's going on? Cade took a deep breath. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He pulled away from her. Sorry, I need to stand for this. Selena's stomach lurched. What was he going to tell her? She sat up again, but she wrapped herself in the comforter. Even though the room's temperature was mild, she felt icy. Cade began to pace around the room. Mom told you someone stole Lally, but that isn't true, he said. She glanced at Selena. He didn't say anything. She concentrated on composing her face into an expression calm non-judgment. What happened, Cade went on, was that we were doing renovations in the pizza plex, and the construction scaffolding collapsed during a round of Lallys Game. The collapse punched a hole in the game's exterior wall. Cade stepped over the window and looked out into the night. The moon was close to full now. Its silvery radiance put Cade in the spotlight. The auditorium was evacuated and Lally's was closed down because Lally went missing, Cade went on. It was assumed he'd been stolen. But you said that's not what happened, Selena said. Glanced over at her. He shook his head, then turned back toward the window. For weeks after the Lallys Game arena was closed, I kept seeing Lally. I saw him everywhere. He and him, Selena thought, not it. I saw him on top of my shelves one day, Cade said. One afternoon he was on my desk behind my toy astronauts. Once I parted the coats from my closet, saw Lally standing there at the back of the closet, looking out at me. I saw him once in the bathroom behind the shower curtain. Several times I spotted him in the backyard. He was always hiding. He was always playing a perpetual game of hide and seek. Goosebumps crept up Selena's arms. She rubbed them. Whenever I spotted him, he always frozen on the spot, always smiling that half smile he had. Cade stopped talking. He rubbed his own arms, as if he had goosebumps too. Selena cleared her throat. Was someone playing a joke on you? Cade turned. His expression was resigned. I wish. No. Lally followed me home. Selena's breath caught. Her heart started thumping so hard that in her chest that she was sure Cade could hear it. Lally messed with me for weeks before I finally stopped him. Cade gave Selena a slightly triumphant grin. You know Mom's sewing room? Selena nodded. One day, when she was out in one of her meetings, I took everything out of that room. It wasn't much then. She had just a sewing machine on the table, that dummy she pins on her patterns on, and a few plastic storage bins. I emptied the room, and I dragged the trunk into the room. I figured Lally wouldn't be able to resist hiding in the trunk. Selena bit her lip and remained silent. I waited an hour, Kate said. Then I ran into the room, and I locked the trunk. I trapped him. Selena frowned. Did you look in the trunk to be sure he was there? Cade shook his head. I didn't want to risk him getting back out. I just locked it. I knew he was inside. Selena gazed at the man who, up until this moment, she thought was one of the smartest people she'd ever met. Cade was programming genius. He could talk about almost any subject. His mind was sharp, and his logic was impeccable, usually. The only thing Selena could conclude about what Cade had just said was some part of the psyche stuck in his childhood. He had been so traumatized by the destruction of his favorite game that he created an elaborate fantasy about it. That had to be it. Obviously, Cade hadn't trapped anything. He locked an empty trunk. But in his childhood fantasy, he convinced himself that the tormentor had been contained. In his confidence, he'd locked up Lally. That made his fear of the robot go away. That's why he stopped having hallucinations about Lally. He obviously had been hallucinating. There had been no other explanation. Cade returned to bed. He sat down and rotated towards Selena. Say something. Selena took a breath. When she laid out her theory, she finished with a story from her own childhood. My best friend Zoe. You remember me talking about her? Went through a phase when we were in first grade. She was sure this big purple monster was living under her bed. I mean, she was sure of it. She talked about it all the time. Eventually, your parents did something similar to what you did. They thought they were playing a trap for the monster, and they caught. Selena put her hands in air quotes around the word. The monster in the big box. After that, Zoe was fine. The same thing happened to you. When a child convinced that something was trapped and can't hurt him anymore, the fear of it disappears. Cade started shaking his head in the middle of Selena's story. Why, the end of it, he was shaking his head so hard that his hair was whipping into his eyes. Lally is an imaginary purple monster. He's real. And he was in that trunk before you unlocked it. Selena didn't miss Cade's use of the present tense. Lally isn't, not Lally wasn't. Selena decided to get his troubling detail aside for the moment. It was more than she could deal with. She scooted across the bed and took Cade's hand. Cade, honey, nothing was in that trunk. You were a little boy, a traumatized little boy, and you reassured yourself by telling yourself Lally was locked into the trunk. That's why you stopped seeing it. It was basic psychology. Cade didn't respond for several seconds. He was frozen, staring at the floor. Finally, Cade reluctantly squeezed Selena's hand. We need to get some sleep. He got on the covers, turned off the light, he said. Selena opened her mouth to object. She knew Cade was rejecting her explanation, but she was tired, and she didn't want to think about it anymore. She turned off the light and lay down. Cade scooted over and wrapped her in his arms, spooning her. Selena forced herself to concentrate on Cade's familiar warmth, and she made herself ignore the frantic pace of his beating heart, which she could feel against her back. Even after Cade's heart rate slowed and he settled into sleep, Selena once again remained awake for a long time. The next couple of weeks passed relatively uneventfully, and on several nights Selena and Cade spent the evening with Janice. They helped her with chores and had dinner with her. If they weren't with Janice, Cade worked late. He worked so late that he missed dinner. He'd come home just before 10 or so. They'd have a cup of tea or hot chocolate, talk about their day, and then go to bed. Both Selena and Cade were sleeping fitfully. but they were sleeping. If Cade was setting up during the night, Selena didn't hear him. The dark circles under his eyes, though, didn't go away. Selena kept herself busy during the day with both work and renovations. The first week after Cade told her about Lally, Selena threw herself into setting up her home office. She refinished the hardened wood floor and painted the walls a mossy green, hanging curtains and stripes of the gray in the same green of the walls. She then went out to find the perfect rug, desk set, credenza, and a new set of fill-iron cabinets. She hung her favorite prints on the walls, and she declared the office done. Once she was finished with the office, Selena demolished the half-bath. It was great to swing a sledgehammer over and over. Slamming heavy steel against porcelain tiles was deliciously cathartic. Over the weekend after she destroyed the bathroom, Selena and Cade tiled the floor and installed a new toilet, vanity, and sink. They had worked on sun up to sundown both days. Was there something a little more forensic about their pace? Probably, but neither of them mentioned it. After they finished the half bath, Selena turned into an eccentric painting lady. After they agreed on a pale top color for the walls with white trim, she painted the entire main floor. When she was done, she and Kay went to the Marathon Furniture shopping spree, purchasing an antique cherry dining room set and a navy blue sofa and a love seat, a navy blue rug with a cream atop geometric pattern, an oak coffee table with two matching end tables and a pair of antique brass lamps for the end of tables. Selena found the perfect top and dark blue tweed drapes for the living room, and when she feverishly brought throw pillows and art, she spent several hours arranging and rearranging the furniture, finally settling on the configuration that put the sofa and love seat in the middle of the room. She positioned themselves flat. The fireplace, the dining room, and the living room were done by the end of the month. The kitchen was going to require a professional, so they hadn't tackled that yet. However, with most of the main living areas complete, Selena decided it was time to have some people over. Kay had made many new friends on the job. On a few nights he didn't work late, he and Selena were invited to several dinners so he and Selena could get to know Kate's new coworkers and their spouses. Between those people and their friends Selena was making on her walks and during the shopping trips, they were developing an enjoyable social network. Let's have the Petersons, the Taylors, and the Lees over this dinner this weekend, Selena suggested one night, and they cuddled on the sofa, sipping hot chocolate. We owe them all dinners. We owe them? Kate said. He grinned at Selena. Did I miss something? Did we sign a tit-for-tat contract when we had dinner at their houses? Selena slightly smacked his thigh. You know what I mean. Yes, I do, Miss Adequate. Selena rolled her eyes. I'm thinking something casual. It's warm enough. We could barbecue. Sure, Kate said. He set down his mug and put his arm around Selena. That sounds fun. On nights like these, Selena could have most convenienced herself. That night, everything was fine. She could almost forget about the trunk, about Lally. Almost. The night of the barbecue, they had perfect weather. It was warm, and the sky was full of sparkling stars that looked like they had been hung over the heads like party decorations. After the feast of burgers, macaroni salad, green salad chips, and corn on the cob, followed by homemade brownies, Jenna's recipe, Cade said that they tasted just like his mom's. The forward couple set food on the gas fire pit Selena had installed just days before the get-together. They all had reclined on the plush navy and cream-striped patio chairs she'd bought the day before. How about charades? Selena asked. Grace Peterson, a petite woman with short-cropped blonde hair, popped out of her chair. I want to be in huge steam. She poked her husband Ron and made him change places with her. Ron, an unusually pale guy with long brown hair, rolled his eyes and good-naturally gave his wife a game of musical chairs. She noticed Selena's questioning look. Hugh is a film and literature buff, he explained. More like a trivia nut, Hugh Taylor's wife, Teresa said. A tall and broad-shouldered redhead. Teresa dwarfed her short, bald husband, but in appearances aside, they appeared to be a perfect match. It was impossible to miss that they were crazy about each other. Selena grinned. Well, and I want to be on Hugh's team, too. Everyone laughed. Grace stood. I've got one. Hugh and Selena on their other teammate, Iva Lee, an athletic brunette, look up at her, and Grace made a universal sign for movie. Hugh winked at Selena and Ava. They grinned. Grace held up 6 fingers. 6 words, Selena said unnecessarily. Grace held up 1 finger. First word, Ava said. Grace nodded. Then she shook her head. He held up 1 finger. Selena frowned, confused. Point, Hugh asked. He leaned towards Selena. The clue is the 1 finger. Point Break. Selena shouted. Cade snorted a laugh. That's just 2 words, sweetie. Selena blushed. Grace shook her head. She started lifting and lowering her arms as she was flying. The birds, Selena blurted. The blush deeper in seconds and words were out of her mouth. And then she laughed. Ignore me, I'm math challenged. Everyone else laughed too. Grace chewed on her lower lip, and her eyes lit up. She bared her teeth and shifted her gaze to the far left. She looked deranged. Again, Selena shouted without thinking. The Shining. She was pretty pleased with herself for realizing Grace was mimicking the star actor's crazed expression in the movie. Everyone laughed. Selena clapped her hand over her mouth. She took her head and dropped her hand and laughed too. I really can't count, can I? She looked over at Hugh. He smiled at her, and then calmly said, One flew over the cuckoo's nest. Grace clapped and rushed over to give Hugh a high five. Selena shook her head. Sorry for being so dense. Ava laughed. It's the adrenaline. Who has time to count words? I almost said The Shining too. You just beat me to it. I'm sorry to say this, but I've read more than I can chew. And by that, I mean I've read some extra today. So we are actually on a newer schedule, which is kind of interesting. Or at least next time we will be. Come on, mouse. Okay, cool. So we go here. Double tap. So now we have to do 122 to 140 next time. And then the time after that, we gotta do 140. No, I'm trying my best not to read it, because next time is gonna be pretty short. It's only 18. Next time we're doing 140 to 160, which is actually into the new chapter Under Construction, which is kind of exciting. But that's also going to be a pretty short day. So we have 2 short days coming up, which is nice. So, yeah. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. I'm assuming Lally is that little thing right there. Like the little purplish guy right here, which is kind of neat to see. I'm assuming that's her, or that's Lally, right? That's the assumption. It's kind of interesting and kind of a weird thought that that thing used to be allowed around kids, but that's okay. Kind of interesting that they're like bringing in the more social stuff, because usually they are like, I'm alone, my parents hated me type of stuff in these stories. So it's nice to see finally people having a social life in these books. Anyways, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time.